The unexpected guest. The northern lights danced across the Alaskan sky as Elijah Foster adjusted his telescope. At 32, he had grown accustomed to solitude in his remote cabin, 20 miles from the nearest town. His breath fogged in the cold air as he studied the unusual stellar anomaly that had appeared 3 nights ago. Still there? He murmured, making notes in his worn journal. The astronomical community had dismissed his reports of the strange light pattern, but Elijah knew something unprecedented was happening in the night sky. The wind picked up, carrying the promise of snow. Weather reports had warned of a massive blizzard approaching, even by Alaskan standards. Elijah reluctantly disassembled his telescope, securing the pieces in their protective cases. As he turned toward his cabin, a flash of brilliant light streaked across the sky, followed by a distant impact that shook the ground beneath his feet. Elijah froze, his heart pounding against his ribs. That wasn't a meteor, it was too controlled, too precise. What the hell? He whispered, reaching for his flashlight. Common sense told him to go inside, to wait until morning, but curiosity had always been his downfall. He pulled on his heaviest coat and gloves, grabbed his emergency pack and set out toward where he estimated the object had landed. The snow began falling in earnest as he trudged through the forest. Pine trees swayed in the gathering storm, their branches heavy with snow. After nearly an hour of difficult hiking, Elijah found it, a small craft steaming in the snow, its metallic surface reflecting the aurora overhead. It wasn't large, perhaps the size of a small car, with no identifiable markings. Definitely not human technology. Elijah approached cautiously, his scientific mind racing with possibilities. A section of the craft slid open with a soft hiss. Elijah stumbled backward, nearly falling into the snow. A figure emerged, humanoid but unmistakably not human. In the glow of his flashlight, he saw lavender skin that seemed to shimmer with an internal light. It was a woman, or at least a female of her species. She stood about 5.5 feet tall, her features delicate yet strong. Her eyes were large and almond-shaped, a deep indigo that reminded Elijah of twilight. Her hair, if it could be called that, was composed of what appeared to be luminescent strands that floated around her head as if underwater. She wore a form-fitting suit of an unknown material that shifted colors like oil on water. She swayed, clearly injured, and Elijah instinctively moved forward to catch her before she fell. "Easy," he said, though he doubted she could understand him. "I've got you." To his shock, she responded in perfect English, her voice melodic with an accent he couldn't place. The atmospheric entry was more difficult than anticipated. Elijah stared at her. "You speak English?" She touched a small device at her throat. "Universal translator. Standard issue for explorers." She winced in pain. "My ship's navigation system was damaged by a solar flare. I need to make repairs." The snow was falling harder now, the wind howling through the trees. "There's a blizzard coming," Elijah said. "A bad one. You can't stay out here." She looked at her damaged craft, then at the sky. "I cannot leave my ship unprotected." "It'll be buried in snow by morning anyway," Elijah reasoned. "We can come back after the storm. Right now we need to get to shelter." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "Very well." She reached into the craft and retrieved a small metallic cube. "My essentials." They made their way back to Elijah's cabin as the storm intensified. By the time they reached his door, visibility had dropped to almost nothing. Inside, the warmth of the wood stove was a welcome relief. "I'm Elijah," he said, helping her to a chair by the fire. "Elijah Foster." "My name is Lyra," she replied, her indigo eyes reflecting the firelight. "Thank you for your assistance, Elijah Foster." As he hung their coats and prepared hot drinks, Elijah realized his quiet, predictable life had just become anything but. Outside, the blizzard raged, sealing them together in his small cabin, and across from him sat a visitor from another world, watching him with curious eyes. "Your world is very cold," Lyra observed, warming her hands around the mug he offered. "Only this part of it," Elijah replied, still struggling to accept that he was having a conversation with an extraterrestrial being. "And only in winter." Lyra sipped the tea cautiously. "It's pleasant here. With you." The wind howled outside as the storm settled in for what promised to be days, not hours, and in that moment Elijah knew his life would never be the same again. Different World's morning arrived with blinding whiteness. The blizzard had buried Elijah's cabin under a thick blanket of snow, blocking the lower half of his windows. He woke to the scent of something unfamiliar, a sweet floral aroma that reminded him of spring despite the winter roaring outside. In the kitchen, Lyra stood examining his coffee maker with fascination. She had found one of his flannel shirts and was wearing it over her strange, color-shifting suit. The purple hue of her skin seemed brighter in daylight, with subtle patterns that appeared and disappeared like ripples on water. "Good morning," Elijah said, his voice still rough with sleep. "What are you doing?" Lyra turned, her luminescent hair floating softly around her face. "I was attempting to understand this device. The molecular structure of the black liquid inside is fascinating. A stimulant, yes?" "Coffee," Elijah confirmed, moving beside her. Their arms brushed and he felt a slight electric tingle where they touched. "It helps humans wake up." "Humans need chemical assistance to transition between consciousness states?" Lyra asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Elijah laughed. "Not need, exactly. We just enjoy it." He reached past her to press the brew button. "I'll make us both a cup." As the coffee brewed, Elijah checked his satellite phone. No signal. The storm must have knocked out the relay stations. They were truly isolated. "Your communications are down," Lyra observed, not a question but a statement. "How did you—" "Your expression. It's similar to how my people look when disconnected from the collective." She touched her translator device. "This has limited range, but my ship contains communication technology that might help. Once the storm passes." They settled on opposite ends of Elijah's worn sofa, coffee mugs in hand. Outside, the wind continued its relentless assault against the cabin. "Tell me about your world," Elijah said, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. "Where are you from?" Lyra's expression softened. "My home planet orbits a binary star system approximately 78 light-years from here. We call it Aloria." She paused, sipping her coffee tentatively. "It's mostly ocean, with archipelagos where we build our cities. The gravity is lighter than Earth's and our atmosphere contains more helium." "And your people? Are they all like you?" "We vary in skin tone from pale lavender to deep violet. Some have bioluminescent markings, others don't." She studied him. "Just as humans vary in pigmentation, yes?" Elijah nodded. "Why were you near Earth?" "Is this first contact?" Lyra laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "No, we've been observing Earth for centuries. My mission was to update our stellar maps of this sector. I wasn't supposed to make contact." She looked down at her hands. "My people believe humans aren't ready for open interaction." "Maybe they're right," Elijah admitted. "We don't have the best track record with those who are different from us." "Yet you helped me," Lyra pointed out. Without hesitation. Their conversation continued as daylight faded into evening. Elijah explained his work as an astronomer. His choice to live in isolation after his research on potential extraterrestrial signals had been ridiculed by his colleagues. Lyra spoke of her culture, a society built on collective knowledge but with deep respect for individual exploration. As night fell, Elijah built up the fire. The temperature outside had dropped dangerously low, and even with the wood stove burning, the cabin's furthest corners remained chilly. "Your thermal regulation system seems inefficient," Lyra observed, wrapping herself in a blanket. "It's an old cabin," Elijah said apologetically. "The insulation isn't great." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "My species generates more body heat than humans. On my world, it's customary to share warmth during cold seasons." Before Elijah could respond, she moved closer to him on the sofa. Her body radiated heat like a small sun, immediately warming the space between them. "Is this acceptable?" she asked, her indigo eyes searching his face. "Yes," Elijah replied, his voice unexpectedly hoarse. "It's nice." As they sat together in the firelight, Lyra began to hum softly, a melody unlike anything Elijah had ever heard, with notes that seemed to exist between the standard musical scale. The sound resonated in his chest, calming and exciting him simultaneously. "That's beautiful," he whispered. "What is it?" "A bonding song from my world," she explained, sung when new connections form between souls. "Are we forming a connection?" Elijah asked, surprised by his own boldness. Lyra's gaze was direct, unfiltered. "I believe we already have." Later that night, as they prepared for sleep, the practical problem of accommodations arose. Elijah's cabin had only one bedroom. "You take the bed," he insisted. "I'll sleep on the sofa." Lyra frowned. "That's unnecessary. The sleeping platform is adequate for two." It's not that simple for humans, Elijah explained awkwardly. We have customs about sharing sleeping spaces. Interesting, Lyra said. Is it a territorial instinct? No, it's more about... Elijah struggled to find the right words. Intimacy, privacy. Lyra considered this. On Eloria, sleep is considered a vulnerable state. Sharing it indicates trust, not necessarily mating intention. She touched his arm gently. I trust you, Elijah Foster, and the temperature will drop further tonight. In the end, practicality won over custom. They lay side by side in Elijah's bed, a respectful space between them, listening to the howling wind. Despite his intention to maintain distance, Elijah woke in the middle of the night to find himself drawn to Lyra's warmth. They had shifted closer in sleep, her back against his chest, his arm draped over her waist. He should move away, he thought drowsily, but the comfort of her warmth and the soft, sweet scent of her skin kept him still. Just before drifting back to sleep, he felt her fingers intertwine with his, a gentle acknowledgement of their unconscious seeking. Outside, the blizzard continued its siege, sealing them in their small world of firelight and shared warmth. But inside, something was blooming between worlds, fragile, unexpected, and increasingly undeniable. The claiming the storm's fury finally broke on the 5th day. Elijah woke to sunlight streaming through frost-edged windows, painting golden patterns across the bedroom floor. The space beside him was empty, the sheets still warm from Lyra's presence. He found her standing by the large picture window in the living room, her lavender skin luminous in the morning light. She had fashioned her color-shifting suit into something resembling human clothing, a simple dress that flowed around her like liquid. Moonlight. The atmospheric disturbance has passed, she said without turning, her voice carrying a note of something Elijah couldn't quite identify. Reluctance, perhaps? We should check on your ship, he replied, moving to stand beside her. The landscape outside was transformed. Pristine white stretching to the horizon, trees laden with snow, the sky a perfect blue. Over the past days, they had fallen into an unexpected rhythm together. Elijah taught Lyra about human cuisine, music, and literature. She shared knowledge of distant stars he had only dreamed of observing, describing worlds with rings of crystalline ice and oceans of liquid methane. Their conversation stretched late into the night, and each morning they woke closer together than when they had fallen asleep. Yes, Lyra agreed softly. We should check the ship. They dressed warmly and set out across the snow-covered terrain. The temperature had risen enough to make the journey pleasant, the snow firm beneath their boots. Elijah carried a backpack with tools and emergency supplies, while Lyra navigated using a small device from her metallic cube. It's just beyond that ridge, she said, pointing to a hill covered in snow-laden pines. As they crested the ridge, Elijah saw that the ship was exactly where they had left it, though now it resembled a strange metallic igloo, covered in snow with only parts of its surface visible. Lyra approached it confidently, placing her palm against what appeared to be a seamless section of hull. The snow slid away as a door irised open, revealing the craft's interior. She turned to Elijah, extending her hand. Would you like to see inside? The interior of the ship was surprisingly spacious, with organic curves instead of the sharp angles Elijah had expected. Soft blue light emanated from the walls themselves, and the air carried the same sweet floral scent he had come to associate with Lyra. This is the command center, she explained, gesturing to a horseshoe-shaped console with no visible buttons or screens. And these are the damaged navigation components. Elijah examined the technology with awe. Can you repair it? Yes, but it will take time. Lyra touched several points on the console and holographic displays sprang to life, showing diagrams and scrolling text in an alien script. 3 of your Earth days, perhaps 4. Elijah felt a strange twist in his chest. 4 days, and then she would leave. Return to her world, her people, her life among the stars. The thought brought an unexpected ache. I can help, he offered, though he knew Earth technology was primitive compared to hers. Lyra smiled, the expression lighting her indigo eyes. I would welcome your assistance. She hesitated, then added, and your company. They worked together through the afternoon, Lyra explaining the basic principles of her ship's technology, while Elijah provided tools and an extra pair of hands. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the snow, they gathered their things to return to the cabin. Just as they prepared to leave, Lyra's console emitted a series of musical tones. Her expression changed instantly, a mixture of concern and surprise crossing her features. "What is it?" Elijah asked. "A signal from my people," she replied, her fingers dancing across the console. "They've detected my ship's distress beacon. They're sending a recovery vessel." "That's good news, right?" Elijah said, trying to sound positive despite the hollow feeling spreading through him. Lyra didn't answer immediately. When she finally turned to face him, her eyes held an intensity he hadn't seen before. "Elijah, there's something I need to tell you about my species." Back at the cabin, they sat before the fire as Lyra explained. "My people form bonds differently than humans. When we find someone compatible, someone whose energy resonates with our own, we experience what we call the alignment. It's rare, especially with other species. And you've experienced this." "Alignment?" Elijah asked, his mouth suddenly dry. "With you," Lyra confirmed. "Each night as we slept, our energy patterns have been synchronizing. I felt it happening but didn't tell you because I wasn't certain." "What does it mean?" Lyra's luminescent hair swirled more actively, reflecting her emotional state. "In my culture, when alignment occurs, it initiates a claiming process. It's both biological and spiritual, a recognition that two beings are uniquely suited to each other." "A claiming," Elijah repeated, the word heavy with implications. "Like marriage?" "More binding," Lyra said. "Marriage can be dissolved. The claiming is permanent once completed." Elijah stood, moving to the window to gather his thoughts. Outside, the northern lights had begun their dance across the sky, green and purple ribbons weaving through the stars. "You're saying we've started some kind of alien bonding ritual without me knowing?" His voice wasn't accusatory, merely trying to understand. "The initial phase occurred naturally," Lyra explained, joining him at the window. "But the completion requires conscious choice from both participants." She touched his arm gently. "I would never claim you without your consent, Elijah." He turned to face her, struck again by her otherworldly beauty and the depth in her eyes. "Why me? You could claim someone from your own world." "The alignment doesn't follow logical patterns," she said. "It simply is. Like your concept of falling in love, but with a biological component our science has never fully explained." She stepped closer. "When my people arrive, I will have a choice to make. Return with them or—" She left the alternative unspoken. "Stay," Elijah finished for her. The word hung between them, filled with possibility and complication. "If I stay, I cannot return. If I go, I cannot come back." Her voice was steady, but Elijah saw the conflict in her eyes. "And if the claiming remains incomplete, we will both feel its absence for the rest of our lives. A phantom connection, always reaching, never touching." Elijah took her hands in his. They were warm, impossibly soft, with a subtle texture unlike human skin. "How is it completed? The claiming?" Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "Are you certain you want to know?" "Once told, the knowledge cannot be undone." "I'm certain," he said, surprising himself with the truth of it. "Through shared breath, shared touch, shared essence," Lyra whispered. She raised her hand to his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "My people believe that in the claiming, two souls recognize each other across the void of creation." Without conscious thought, Elijah leaned forward until their foreheads touched. The contact sent a wave of warmth through his body, as if some current had completed its circuit. Lyra's breath caught, her eyes closing. "Like this," he murmured. "Yes," she breathed. "And this." She brushed her lips against his, a whisper of contact that deepened as Elijah responded. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, then grew more certain. Where their skin touched, Elijah felt that same electric tingle, stronger now, flowing between them like a current. Lyra drew back slightly, her indigo eyes luminous with emotion. "There is more, if you wish it." Elijah answered by taking her hand and leading her toward the bedroom, where the northern lights painted shifting patterns through the window. As they moved together in the gentle glow, boundaries between worlds seemed to dissolve. Human and alien, Earth and Aloria separate and united. Later, as they lay entwined in the darkness, Lyra traced patterns on his chest that left faint trails of bioluminescence on his skin. "It's done," she whispered. "The claiming is complete." Elijah felt different somehow, more aware of his own body, more connected to the woman beside him, as if some part of her essence now flowed through his veins. What happens now? He asked, watching the subtle patterns rippling beneath her lavender skin. Now, Lyra said, we wait for my people to arrive, and we decide our future, together. Outside, a shooting star streaked across the Alaskan sky, a harbinger of the visitors soon to come, and the choices that would change both their lives forever. Hunters from the stars. The ship appeared 3 days later, a sleek silver vessel that descended through the clouds with barely a sound. Unlike Lyra's small craft, this one was imposing, at least 3 times larger with angular protrusions that gave it a predatory appearance. Elijah and Lyra stood hand in hand outside the cabin, watching as it landed in the clearing near where her craft had fallen. The snow melted in a perfect circle around it, steam rising into the cold air. Those aren't researchers, Lyra said, her voice tight with concern. That's a hunter vessel. Hunters? Elijah's grip on her hand tightened. What are they hunting? Me. Her luminescent hair had darkened, reflecting her anxiety. Or more precisely, the technology I carry. My research has implications my government considers sensitive. A door slid open on the side of the ship and 3 figures emerged. They were similar to Lyra in basic form, but taller, with deeper purple skin and facial markings that looked almost like ritualistic scars. They wore fitted armor that shimmered with the same color-shifting quality as Lyra's suit, but darker, more aggressive. Stay behind me, Lyra whispered, stepping forward to meet them. The tallest of the 3 approached, his movements fluid and precise. Researcher Lyra, he said, his translator making his voice sound metallic. You violated protocol by making contact with a native species. The violation was necessary for survival, Lyra replied evenly. My ship was damaged. Commander Vex, these are not the actions of a criminal, but of a scientist caught in extraordinary circumstances. The commander's gaze shifted to Elijah, his expression cold. You've done more than make contact. You've initiated a claiming with this human. He pronounced the word as if it tasted bitter. The council will not recognize such a bond. The claiming is complete, Lyra stated, a note of defiance entering her voice. It is beyond the council's authority to dissolve it. Commander Vex signaled to his companions, who began moving to flank Elijah and Lyra. You will return with us immediately. The human will be treated according to first contact protocols. Memory alteration and relocation. No. Elijah stepped forward, surprising himself with his boldness. Lyra stays if she wants to stay, and no one's altering my memories. One of the hunters raised a device that resembled a small rod. Resistance is ill-advised, human. What happened next occurred so quickly Elijah could barely follow. Lyra moved with unexpected speed, her hand touching a small device at her wrist. A pulse of energy expanded outward, and the hunter's weapon suddenly powered down. Localized electromagnetic disruption, she explained quickly. It won't last long. Commander Vex's expression darkened. You've chosen your side, then? I've chosen my path, Lyra corrected, as is my right under the Explorer's Covenant. The Covenant doesn't apply to primitive worlds, Vex growled. Article 7 specifically addresses bonds formed during emergency situations, Lyra countered. I know the law, Commander. Do you wish to violate it in front of witnesses? A tense silence fell as Vex considered her words. Finally, he stepped back. The Council will hear of this. They will, Lyra agreed, including how a hunter vessel was dispatched instead of a research team. She lifted her chin. My final report is already encoded and ready for transmission, including everything I've observed here, and everything that has happened since your arrival. The standoff continued for several more minutes before Vex finally signaled his team to retreat. This isn't over, he warned. For now it is, Lyra replied. They watched as the hunters returned to their ship. Before entering, Vex turned back. The claiming may be recognized, he conceded grudgingly, but it comes with consequences. If you stay, researcher Lyra, you can never return home. As the ship rose into the sky, Elijah put his arm around Lyra's shoulders. Are you okay? She watched the vessel until it disappeared among the clouds. I knew the price when I completed the claiming. She turned to face him, her indigo eyes reflecting the vast Alaskan sky. The question is whether you're willing to pay it too. What do you mean? They'll be back, Lyra said softly. With authorization? We can't stay here, Elijah looked at his cabin, the only home he'd known for years. Then he looked at Lyra, a woman from the stars who had claimed him and been claimed in return. "Then we'll go," he said simply. Together. The decision had been made. Now they just needed to find a way to outrun hunters from the stars. Between two skies, dawn broke over the Pacific, as Elijah and Lyra stood on the deck of the small boat, watching the Alaskan coastline recede. 3 weeks had passed since the hunters' visit, 3 weeks of careful planning, of Lyra repairing and modifying her ship, of Elijah saying goodbye to his former life. "Are you sure about this?" Lyra asked, her lavender skin catching the first rays of sunlight. "Once we activate the beacon, there's no turning back." Elijah took her hand, feeling the now familiar electric connection between them. The claiming had changed them both in subtle ways. He could sense her emotions now just as she could sense his. Sometimes at night he dreamed of crystalline oceans and twin suns rising over alien shores. "I've never been more certain of anything," he said. Behind them, secured to the boat's deck, Lyra's repaired craft gleamed. She had transformed it, reconfiguring its systems to accommodate 2 occupants instead of 1. More importantly, she had modified its communication array to send a specific signal, not to her people, but to others. Explorers, she called them. Independent researchers who had broken from the rigid structure of her world's government. "The Nomad Collective will answer," Lyra said confidently. "They've accepted others like us before. Beings from different worlds who found each other despite the vastness of space." "And the hunters?" Elijah asked. "Can't track us once we're beyond this solar system." She smiled, the expression lighting her indigo eyes. "The universe is vast, Elijah. Even the most determined hunters can't search it all." They had chosen this remote stretch of ocean carefully, far from prying eyes, deep enough that the ship could submerge until nightfall before beginning its journey upward. As the sun climbed higher, Lyra initiated the beacon sequence. A soft pulse emanated from the ship, invisible to human technology but clear as a lighthouse to those who knew how to look. "How long?" Elijah asked. "Hours, perhaps. Maybe a day." Lyra's luminescent hair drifted in the ocean breeze. "They're never far from Earth. Your world has always fascinated independent explorers." They spent the day securing their few possessions and preparing the ship. Elijah had brought only what mattered most: his astronomical journals, photographs of his family, and a small wooden box containing earth from his cabin's garden. A piece of home to take among the stars. As twilight approached, a shimmer appeared in the sky above them. A distortion like heat waves over hot asphalt, but moving with purpose. "They're here," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with wonder and relief. A ship materialized, larger than Lyra's but smaller than the hunter's vessel. Its design was unlike either, with flowing organic lines and surfaces that seemed to ripple like water. It hovered silently above the waves, then extended what looked like a beam of liquid light down to their boat. "Our invitation," Lyra explained, gathering her things. "Are you ready?" Elijah looked up at the alien vessel, then back at the distant shoreline of the world he had known. For a moment doubt flickered. Was he truly prepared to leave everything behind? Then he felt Lyra's emotions through their bond, her love, her certainty, her vision of their future together. Not just on her world or his, but among the stars. Part of something greater than either of them had imagined alone. "I'm ready," he said, taking her hand. The light enveloped them, warm and welcoming. As they rose toward the waiting ship, Elijah felt not loss but possibility expanding around him like the universe itself. Aboard the collective's vessel, they were greeted by a diverse group of beings, some resembling Lyra, others entirely different, with forms Elijah could barely comprehend. Yet all regarded the human and his Elorian partner with the same accepting curiosity. "Welcome, claymates," said a tall, willowy being with skin like burnished copper. "I am Tala, navigator of the Star Song. You are safe here." Later, as the ship accelerated beyond Earth's atmosphere, Elijah and Lyra stood before a viewing portal watching his home planet grow smaller. "What happens now?" he asked, still awed by the reality of his situation. Lyra's fingers intertwined with his. Purple against tan, alien against human, 2 beings who had found each other across impossible distances. "Now we explore," she said simply. "Together." Below them, Earth became a blue marble, then a distant point of light among countless others. Ahead stretched the infinite canvas of space, and a future neither could have imagined before a crashed ship and a winter storm brought them together. Between two skies, Elijah murmured, remembering an Elorian phrase Lyra had taught him. The space where different worlds meet and something new is born. Lyra smiled. Between two skies, she agreed, our story begins. The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth behind. But within the vessel, something of both worlds remained, a claiming that bridged the gap between stars, proving that even in the vastness of the cosmos, some connections transcend all boundaries.